I was too comfortable. I just remember being sat at my desk, dust was settling on my shoes, same office, same people, and nothing had changed. So after 25 years, I was like, why not give it a go?
My superhero guest today is a former lawyer turned functional medicine health coach, a two-time recipient of the Women of Wellness Award, and founder of B-FIT the Wright Way.
Speaking of alcohol and fitness, let's talk about my health journey. It's a little ironic that we're drinking whiskey while talking about health. First one is a Nikka, 21 years old.
Lifespan has extended, but not necessarily health span.
I don't want the years at the end. You can have them. I've seen enough people those last 5-6 years staring outside a window not knowing who I am. I'm good. Glenmorangie.
Whether it's 4 weeks or 3 months, or how do you stay consistent with the plan, the longer you are on it, the better your chances are of being consistent.
So environments, you're saying get better friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I met your friends.
Yeah.
I am one of your friends.
Yeah, right. Okay, keep you and then get rid of the rest. Hey guys, Rickesh here, the Whiskey Chief. Firstly, thank you so much for watching this. I really appreciate it. If you could like and subscribe below, it really helps us bring the best whiskeys to you and keep doing this show the best we can. Thanks. Welcome, Beth. Thanks so much for joining me today. Welcome to Whiskey Unfinished, where the whiskey's never finished and neither's the conversation. I've had the pleasure of knowing you, I think, for over 10 years now. You're now in the nutrition, health, personal training, all around, let's say, health guru, is how I think of you. But that's not how it started. So you spent 25 years in-house counsel, as far as I understand, most of the large banks, JP Morgan, et cetera, a lot of other big ones. And then obviously a switch to this whole world is not maybe natural for most people. So why, when did that come about? You know, tell us more about this transition from 25 years in-house legal counsel to now health coach, expert, personal trainer, nutritionist.
Well, I was always doing both at the same time.
Okay.
So when I trained as a lawyer, which was 25 years ago, I also trained as a PT.
Ah, okay.
So I've also always had this like dual role. And I think the fitness and the health and the coaching kind of balanced out the high stress work environment.
Right. But what made you switch to doing this full time and not doing as much of the legal?
I started to build my one-to-one business that you know really well, B-FIT the Wright Way, about 10 years ago, and it was working. I was doing well, I was enjoying it, I was making money, I was seeing people's lives improve from a health perspective, and I thought at some point in time, I'm going to either try this full-time or I'm just going to keep doing it on the side.
Yeah.
So after 25 years, I was like, why not give it a go? Why not see?
Was there a moment or an event or something that made you wake up with that spark? The reason I ask is I think a lot of people in this world have an idea for a business, or maybe even go as far as you did and try it out and do it for a couple hours, whatever. But you were in a, I assume, comfortable, high salary, living here in Hong Kong, super nice life. You know, that's quite a risk, right? That was a risk you took to go full time in this direction. Was there a moment that you remember deciding?
And you almost hit it on the head. I was too comfortable. I just remember being sat at my desk and it was almost like the dust was settling on my shoes. I'd been in the same office with the same people who were all fantastic for 10 years and nothing had changed. And I looked at myself and thought, this could be me in another 10 years. What would I have changed? What would I have improved? Where would I have grown? So that was one thing. And then the other thing was, without even realizing it, whilst I was prioritizing 2 jobs at the same time and everyone else's health, I wasn't taking care of my own. So at some point it was, what is important to me? And for me, health is important.
Yeah.
So
a huge realization. Health's important to all of us, but not all of us put the focus, obviously, that we should, right? I think it's much better now compared to a generation ago, or let's say 2 generations ago. We know a lot more science, education, kind of interesting, developments. I think mostly science and technology. I was watching this interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? He's like this very famous scientist, and he was saying that the average death, like the the average age that people died was about 30 years old for most of humanity.
Yeah.
Until like the late 1880s, where that then went up to like 35.
Yeah.
And then it's all the advancement just in the last 125 or 130 years, where we've gone from 35 to 50 to, I think now it's 70s roughly in
Yeah.
terms of life expectancy.
Even older in Hong Kong, so
Yeah,
80 in
yeah.
Hong Kong. And what's interesting is lifespan has extended, but not necessarily health span. And so that's what everyone is trying to achieve now. Me in particular, like I want to live long, but I want to live healthily. And I think that's the important thing that we need to focus on.
I don't want the years at the end. You can have them. I think I've seen enough people those last 5-6 years staring outside a window, not knowing who I am. I'm good. You can have those 5.
But what if you were to feel amazing? What if you were to feel in your 70s like you do in your 50s? Look like you do in your 50s when you are in your 70s. And we have the science there. We have the knowledge there. And people are starting to pick up on that, I think.
And we have the plastic surgery there
And we
available.
absolutely have the
to
plastic
be
surgery.
able to do that. Do you think that's really possible? Like by the time, we're in our 40s, 50s, et cetera, like at this age, you think by the time we're 80 or 90, we would have because of technology and et cetera, have an ability to live a different life than people who are 80 or 90 now?
Yes, 100%.
Why?
We're already seeing it now. First of all, because we understand what we need for longevity, meaning to live longer healthily. We understand we need muscle mass. We understand that we need to manage our stress levels. All of these things we talked about before, but we never really truly understood. So knowledge first and foremost, and knowledge is power. We're putting money into health and wellness, not just in terms of medical health, but actually in terms of how people are taking care of themselves. And I think there is a desire to live well longer as well.
Well, in the 1950s, I think 1960s, doctors were prescribing cigarettes, right? So there was people, they would say, here, start smoking, right?
And
this is going to
fat
help
loss
you.
drugs were
This is gonna
basically
help you.
Yeah.
And
Amphetamines.
that was
Yeah.
only a generation-ish ago, right?
Correct.
So I think they're not prescribing cigarettes as much as they used to. Okay, let's go back to your career transition now, because I'm an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. I think it's really interesting. What advice would you have for looking back on that moment where you made the jump to full-time? You said you woke up, kind of realized you were in the same spot. I think a lot of people wake up I think the majority of people wake up in that situation every day. Yeah. Right. But you had the courage to take that risk. And I don't know what else that kind of was part of that decision. But what advice would you give to someone listening today who is in that position, who's thinking about doing something but not sure if they should?
I would have done it sooner. Easily would have done it 5 years sooner. I would have backed myself. Like if you know in your heart of heart whether or not you can be good at something, and it's that self-doubt that holds you back. So number one, I'd have done it sooner. Number two, I fully endorse dipping your toes in what you're passionate about at the same time as having a steady income. So I think that was really beneficial for me to build my business, or at least an understanding of my business whilst I still had a salary. And if I could go back, I would definitely have saved more money before I jumped ship.
So let's talk about that. How much, not how much money, but like how many, let's say a year's worth of expenses you think is what you need to make that jump?
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be so much that you're comfortable. Like you kind of need to be uncomfortable, scared, and needing to put everything into what your passion business is, more than passion. Like you need to know that you need to earn enough money to pay your rent and to pay your health insurance and to take care of yourself if things don't work out.
Yeah, well, that's great advice. Let's drink a whiskey. Solange, cheers. So we're going to start with the whiskey on the left there. So I picked 2 whiskeys today. The first one, cheers, is a Nikka, 21 years old. So it's a very light Japanese style whiskey. I picked it because obviously you maybe had coffee today, lots of different things to eat, etc., maybe other drinks. So it's actually kind of hard to go straight into a whiskey with everything that's been in your palate already. So I like to start the evening with something a little bit lighter, generally a Japanese whiskey or a lighter style lowland whiskey from Scotland, or even a blend, something like that, is actually an easy way to get your palate ready for what you're going to be drinking. Hopefully you find this relatively light. And I would start with a small sip because, again, you're jumping to 43% alcohol level, right? From zero. I don't know what you've been doing today, but I think zero. I think we're starting at zero, right? So this is an interesting whiskey also because it has a bit of history behind it. So this is called the Taketsuru. It's named after the current owner of Nikka, in ode to his grandfather, Mr. Taketsuru, who's considered by many as kind of one of the forefathers of Japanese whiskey. So Japanese whiskey really has only been around since about the 1920s. It's actually not right, versus Scotch that's been around 600 plus years.
Yeah.
And this man, Taketsuru, went to Scotland, studied how whiskey is made, married a Scottish woman in the 1920s. If you can imagine I would assume, smaller Japanese man marrying a taller, larger Scottish woman.
Yeah.
They moved back to Japan. He ended up being one of the founders of Yamazaki, but he wasn't the owner there.
Yeah.
And then he moved over and started his own business called Nikka. And Nikka struggled for many, many, many decades, pretty much until his grandson, who's now running it, and they're doing much, much better. And so as an ode to his grandfather and his legacy, he names the 21-year-old Taketsuru. So
what an amazing story.
A little bit of history for you there.
I love it.
So, all right. Speaking of alcohol and fitness, let's talk about my health journey.
Great segue.
Might be, a little contentious or a little ironic that we're drinking whiskey while talking about health. I'll argue that drinking whiskey, if you are going to drink, is probably one of the healthier choices you could make, depending on how much you drink.
Interesting.
Obviously.
Please talk me through this argument.
Okay, well, I've had this argument with myself many times, and I find myself very convincing when I'm trying to convince myself to drink. But if you are going to drink, I think it has among some of the lower calories. And what's good about it is you're not adding any like Sprite or tonic or Coke or any of that, or any really other juice or sweet. If you have a daiquiri, if you have a margarita, if you have a gin and tonic or whatever, all of those have a lot more sugar in them from really not from the alcohol bit, but from the soft drink or the juice that you're adding to it, right?
Yeah.
So compared to beer, I think it has it's less filling definitely than beer. And I think it's about on the same kind of level as a glass of red wine, roughly. I think the calories are slightly less actually than the total. Slightly less. And every old Scottish woman who's lived beyond 90 gives all of the credit to the nip of whiskey she had every day.
Is that right?
It's been documented in terms of longevity. Longevity has been definitely accredited to a dram a day.
A dram a day. How much is a dram?
You're drinking a dram right now. One of those is a dram. Some people do a heavy dram. Some people do a lighter dram. I think that's about 20 milliliters. So 20 milliliters is a dram. I think the other thing about drinking whiskey is you can actually drink it and sip it quite slowly.
And enjoy it. Yeah.
Right? It's not ideally, unless you're in China in a karaoke club, you're not supposed to be pounding this stuff.
Right, and that's why, to your point, why it might be healthier than a lot of drinks is you're not drinking as much volume, even though arguably the alcohol's a lot stronger in a smaller amount.
Yes.
But alcohol,
and you can add water to it if you find. So that's another thing. So if you found that a little, let's say too much or too strong, I definitely encourage a couple of drops of water. It actually helps to open it up as well.
It's not like adding ice to wine and people look down your nose and go, "Oh God, she added water to whiskey."
Yeah, no, I think I think you should add whiskey how you want. That's kind of the beauty of it. But no, I think adding don't add like a glass of water, but a couple of drops of water. Well, I think I'll do it right now. Can I?
Go and do, please.
So just a couple of drops, I think, goes a long way in just opening up that.
Okay.
See if you notice any difference in the flavor. All right, so that's our first whiskey. Let's talk about my fitness journey. And what I wanted to do today is have one of our live coaching calls. Okay. So just for anyone who's listening, I'm currently in the middle of a 3-month coaching program. One of the things that you offer. We do a daily check-in where I send you my macros and my steps and what exercise I've done. You give me some feedback on that every day. And then once a week, we usually have a short call to kind of catch up and see if we need to make any adjustments. So I just started this thing 2.5 weeks ago, basically. The first 2 weeks, I was really, really good, I think. You tell me.
No, you were.
No alcohol. So I was at 74 kilos. That was my weight.
Yeah.
I'm now down to 72 kilos in kind of just 2 weeks. But weight loss wasn't actually my goal.
Yeah.
My goal has been to lose visceral fat or fat loss, right? And try to just get more tone, get a bit more lean. That's what we're working on, right? My calories, my macros have been set at, let's say, around 1,300, 1,400 per day.
Which, by the way, is quite little for most people, but you're not also a heavy guy to start with, right?
And I'm not going to do it for too long.
Right. And so our goal, our focus was to go lower calories than you would do ordinarily, perhaps, but to do it for a short, intense period of time.
Yeah. So how do you think the first 2 weeks have gone for me? Obviously, I've been trying to be high protein. I mean, our goal is 140 grams of protein, about double my weight in kilos.
About 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is fantastic when you're in a deficit.
Yep. What other feedback or anything would you have? I know we did some adjustments on carbs. You want to talk a little bit more about it? So I was pretty anti-carb when we started this. My understanding was high protein, low carbs. Obviously, I cut out, bread, rice.
That's next month.
No water fast for me. I cut out bread, I cut out rice, I cut out all pasta, all that kind of stuff. But I was just eating a little bit of vegetables every day. But that wasn't enough. You made an adjustment.
I think for many people, we need carbohydrates. It's essential for performance. It's essential for our brain. Like your brain uses 120 grams of carbs just to think, just to process. So
everyone or just smart people?
You only know. I'm kidding. On average, most people need 120 grams. Obviously, a bigger person might need more. A smaller person might need less. Not brain size, body size.
Yeah. Okay.
But what we saw with you was it was impacting your sleep.
Yeah.
And I think you are active. You are training most days, and you've been on a low calorie, low carb for a period of time, and it was starting to affect you physiologically.
Yep.
So the reason we check in every day is to see what we need to tweak to keep you moving in the right direction, but not to feel worse, right? The goal is to feel better, improved
and there definitely wasn't enough fiber. I think that was the other thing you've adjusted. So I've added blueberries, apple, a little bit of yogurt, things like that, just to get the fiber content up without getting the carbs too
right. And has your sleep moved in a more positive direction?
Well, I was going to ask you, so it hasn't, but then I had a couple of drinks Tuesday night and then I slept really well. Which I know I broke my plan was to go all of August without drinking. Tuesday, I fell off the wagon, however you want to think about it. Had a couple of beers. It felt amazing, and I slept pretty well. What's the impact of me making a mistake like that, and what advice do you have for me now for the rest of the month? Let's just
put it behind you. Just put it behind you. It's like life is life. We can't live every single day in this regimented diet. You can for a short period of time and you'll get insane results. But we've also got to find a plan that works for you long term, which is what you and I have put our heads together and said that we're going to do. It's not just about the next 3 months. It's a blueprint for the future. So we get you feeling amazing, but that you stay there.
Yeah. But what is the impact? Let's say we get to a place that I want to. Let's say in terms of my health goals, I'm kind of where I need to be. If I had one night a month, or let's say 2 nights a month where I had 5 or 6 beers or 5 or 6 drinks, what is the impact of that really?
Fairly minimal. I think just from a general health perspective, I think I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm pro-awareness, if you like. Yep. If you're going to drink, what is the impact on your body? I mean, it's a toxin. That doesn't mean I don't drink, but you need to know that. So your body has to detoxify it. It impacts your sleep. So therefore, it impacts your performance, your cognition, your recovery. And if you are really driving for fat loss or to build muscle, then it delays those processes.
Even if you go, let's say, as I say, if you go 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks without any alcohol, can one night of alcohol reverse any of that?
Not at all.
So it's more about if you were drinking 2-3 times a week every week,
100%
over a long period of time, that would have an impact on, which obviously I was for a long time.
That's also true. And it's the next day, right? So if you have a big night out, when we've all done it, the next day you feel terrible, you reach for the rubbish food, you don't want to get up, you definitely don't want to go out and train. So it's just about how it affects you, not just that night, but the next 24 hours, I would say.
So the best advice is, okay, if it happens, it happens. Try to get up in the morning, have a banana, get some potassium, have some electrolytes. Don't order that pizza. Just go right. Don't hurt yourself about it, but just rather just get back on track.
100%.
Just forget that it happened to some
Spoken
degree.
like a pro who's done it before.
Well, what you don't want, which has happened to me, honestly, is to get in this sort of downward spiral, right? Because it's easy to have a big night, feel guilty you had a big night, say, fuck it, I had a big night, so I'll have the pizza,
Yeah.
then cancel the training, and then now it's been a week where you're just completely off
100%.
your plan. So all you need to do really is just pick up the macros again. As soon as I start tracking my food, everything else changes. For me,
Yeah.
do you find that with your clients? If there's one thing for me,
Yeah.
if I had to share that made all the difference,
Yeah.
it was just tracking my macros and trying to hit that protein goal. If I could just do that, I find that everything else kind of has to fit in. And then if you're having that much protein, you don't really feel like having junk food,
Yeah,
and then you kind
true.
of feel like training, and then the training makes you feel better about the eating. And then so for me, it came down to that one thing. Is that fair? Is that different you've seen from your experience or
I
clients?
think it's really fair. I think it depends. Everyone's slightly different. And for me, my job is to find out what that one thing is for each individual person. Like, what is the one thing that's the easiest for them to do that fulfills or makes them want to be healthy for the rest of the day? So one of the biggest, easiest things you can do is have a healthy breakfast. Because if you've done that, you feel like you're winning already. And like for you, if you have a protein-rich breakfast, you're like, oh, wow, I've ticked that box. I'm feeling great. I'm not going to eat shit for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
It also keeps you fuller for longer.
How do you get to the bottom of what's that one thing when you do coaching? Tell me more about that process. How does that work?
Sometimes it takes a while.
Okay.
I get to know my clients inside out, and we've known each other for years as friends before anything else.
Yep.
But it's the digging deeper. It's the asking the uncomfortable questions. It's being with them day in, day out, whilst they're making choices, good and bad. And you get to know someone. You get to know what their driver is. Because when someone comes to you and says, "I want to lose weight, or be stronger, or be healthy, or be fitter," there's always a driver. Whether it's I want to be fit for my grandkids, or whether it's because I want to be fit for my daughter, fit into my wedding dress. There's always that drive, and you got to kind of dial into that, I think.
And how do you get people who are doing it, maybe let's say for a specific event, a wedding or whatever, to then take on the principles and apply that to be sustainable? Because I find that very different than it's not easy, but it is relatively easy to take a month off and reset and don't do no alcohol and all that. But sustaining that is quite difficult. I definitely find kind of when you get to week 3, like we're on now, there was an opportunity. I mean, I had opportunities to have beers before that, but it became a little bit easier in that moment with a group of friends to say, oh, fuck it, I'll have one beer. And then one beer quickly became 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But the first 2 weeks actually was pretty militant about it. I don't know if I'm alone in that journey where
I think your
somewhere around.
environment makes a big difference. Like your first 2 weeks, you were away from temptation.
Yeah.
And so now and that's a big part of what your coach needs to be there for you for. It's not just when you have everything in perfect situation. Like what happens when you go on a business trip?
Yeah.
What happens when you travel? What happens when you're with your best mates? It's like, how do you make the best choices then? And to what we said earlier, if you make a bad choice, that's fine. Fuck it. We move on. Tomorrow's a new day. But in answer to sort of, whether it's 4 weeks or 3 months, or how do you stay consistent with the plan, I think the longer you are on it, the better your chances are of being consistent. The better your chances.
That's like developing a habit.
100%.
Right. And that's how habits are formed, is doing something consistently for a while.
Thousands of times.
So environments, you're saying get better friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I met your friends. I am one of your friends.
Yeah, right. Okay, keep you and then get rid of the rest who are not helping me with this becoming healthy situation. Okay, anything else from our kind of coaching, situation that you would change for me right now? So I'm on the macros. We've talked about that. Trying my best to really have a much more diligent workout plan. So 3 times a week doing strength training. Twice a week doing Pilates. So that's the most I've ever done of anything in my whole life. So what else would you recommend, or is it just stay the path?
I think for you, we talked about a couple of things. I think first, obviously being consistent. I want to not always have you on low carbohydrate. So I want to play around with higher carb days and lower carb days. So that helps your body be better able to tolerate carbohydrates. And I want you to do interval work because that has been shown to help with focusing on visceral fat.
What do you mean when you say interval? Are you talking about HIIT training?
Yeah,
say a bit more.
But a specific type of HIIT training, not the Orange Theory or the classes that you can often go to for 45 minutes. The training where you are probably 80 to 90% of your heart rate max for a minute, like almost balls to the wall, and then a minute recovery. And a great protocol is to repeat that 10 times. That's really getting your heart rate up there.
So that's only 20 minutes, but that's 10 minutes of intense.
Yeah.
And what's the high, what are we talking about as high heart rate? I'll use myself as an example. Okay. So my resting heart rate is about 57 to 60. When I am doing some level of, let's say, walking fast, I'm kind of at like 80, 85. When I'm really working out, kind of the highest I've seen is kind of 140, 150.
Yeah.
What does that mean then? Like, what am I trying to reach in that minute?
So everyone's different, and there are calculations that you can sort of, like 220 minus your age to work out what your 100% max might be. But everyone's different, and some people can naturally get to a higher heart rate than others. So I think for you, you'd have to almost do a perceived rate of exertion. So 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 on a perceived rate of exertion scale.
So that's just yourself.
Yes.
Like you just have to say, did I really go the most I can go right now? But that would change over time, right? Because the more you did of
the
this,
fitter you get, and that's the goal.
Yeah. So it never gets easier.
Never.
It's just hard work all the
Correct.
time. All right, fantastic. It's all good news today.
But the point is the body gets more efficient, right? It gets more efficient on lower calories. It gets more efficient on your exercise. So unless you constantly change things up, whether it be through different macros or different calories or different training, you're never going to keep getting the results that you want because your body just adapts. Yeah. So it's about tricking the body.
And that's different at different ages.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So every age group and different between men and women. Or no?
Do they have to do different? What is the question? Do they have to do different
types of exercises? Different.
Yeah, I would say that's person dependent, not sex dependent.
Okay.
So some people do. I would say everyone should focus on strength training, men or women. Some people lean more towards the endurance style of training, depending on their body type and what they enjoy doing.
Okay, I have a lot of lazy friends, so this question's for them. Okay. What is the bare minimum amount of strength training? We're agreeing, and I've come to learn that strength training is really what matters, because the first 20 years of my adult life, I just played tennis. I thought that was great because I was getting good cardio, and I was playing against a coach, so I was moving around, I was sprinting, I was like, this is fantastic. What more could I possibly do than play tennis 3 times? It wasn't actually until we met and I started understanding more strength training, because we lose muscle, correct me if I'm wrong, because we lose muscle mass every year just from getting older. We need to build more muscle mass in order to not be frail, basically, and fall and hurt ourselves when we're much older, and be able to sit down on the toilet and put luggage above the seat of the airline, the basic, and pick up your grandkids and whatever, right? So strength training is important, but let's go one. So my question is, what is the bare minimum amount of strength training that actually makes a difference?
That would offset the natural atrophy of muscle as you get
is there a way to know?
Again, it is person dependent. So some people are very genetically gifted, meaning they could probably go to the gym once a week and that would be enough to sustain them. There's even some research to say if you're already strong and you lift heavy once a week, that would be adequate to maintain your strength. I'm not sure how accurate that is.
But that's not most people.
It's not exactly the point.
Let's take the average.
Let's talk our friends, our group. I would say for most people, male or woman, 2 to 3 times a week. And ideally 3 to 4, but the bare minimum 2 to 3 times a week.
So if you did 3 times a week, how long do you need to be like going in there and lifting weights?
Again, I don't think it's about the time. I think it's about the intensity. I think it's about how focused you are. I see people in the gym for 2 hours and they're on Instagram whilst they're calling their mates, whilst they're sitting on a machine that I could be using, which is very annoying.
That's a PSA announcement for everyone at Beth's gym. Please listen up. Stop doing that.
Exactly.
I'm talking to you.
So it's about the intensity. It's about the weight load that you're using. It's making sure you're progressively increasing the weights or the reps or the sets or the movement.
So how much do you do? Like if you're trying to get in and out, you don't have all the time.
Maximum an hour, ideally 45 minutes. If I'm taking longer than an hour, I'm not being efficient. I'm wasting time and I'm on Instagram.
Okay. So 45 minutes really, including, I guess an hour including some warm-up stretching, all of that. But really the time working out, like lifting or doing, whatever, push-ups, etc. You should be about 45 minutes.
I agree.
And it's and how do we factor into that rest and recovery time? Does that matter? Where does that come in? How do
It does matter, and it depends on the type of training you're doing. So if you are somebody who is lifting heavy, and by lifting heavy, I mean you couldn't do more than, say, 5 or 6 reps, then you're probably going to need more recovery in between your sets because it's challenging your whole central nervous system. If you're going in and you're doing probably more the sort of training that you and I are doing right now,
Yep.
so anywhere from sort of 10 to 15 reps, you don't need more than a minute recovery. So it's going to depend on the type of training and what your end goal is. And that will always change over time. Like you should always be training again for the body to adapt and not get complacent.
Yeah, you're either increasing the weight and reducing the reps kind of as part of that.
That's definitely one of the ways you can do it.
That's the whole way. There we go. We had a friend trying to have some whiskey. Hey guys, Rickesh here, the Whiskey Chief. If you made it this far in the episode, firstly, thank you so much. As you know, it takes a lot to put on these kinds of episodes. So if you can like and subscribe below, it really helps us bring the best whiskeys to you and keep doing this show the best we can. Thanks. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about fitness. We've talked about kind of the exercising. One whole world that you introduced me to that I had really zero of was supplements, right? So this is, I don't know, I think it's your fault because I started ordering supplements and now all of my social media ads are just supplements, right? So everyone...
As long as it's not Viagra, you're fine.
No, I'm not. No, I've not gotten those. Not yet. I'm getting...
You will now.
Yeah, now that we've said that. I'm getting, what David Beckham has arranged. This person, every celebrity now has figured out the perfect mix of the ultimate super vitamin, go ahead, save your life, even in the middle of an emergency kind of stuff, all the way down to this immuno. You're gonna shit for days, but you want to get that stuff out. There's such a variety of, I would say, pretty good marketing.
Very good marketing. I mean, you should be working for them.
Yeah. I mean, I read this stuff and I'm like, could it be? I don't know. What do I know, right? And I just don't have the time or interest to go, or the knowledge to go in and be like, is this a good supplement? Is this really not? I have no idea, right? So again, disclosure-wise, what I'm on, and maybe you could talk a little bit about why you put me on what I'm on, and what of that, again, we'll go back to, I understand everyone's different, but if we got the average person, I want to make this applicable for everyone, right? And certainly they can contact you for a one-on-one coaching session. We hope that happens, but if someone's going to take some advice around supplements, what would you tell them? But the ones I'm on, right? So I take fish oil every morning. I take vitamin B and D because I have a deficiency in those. So to me, that makes sense to take whatever you're deficient in, and that's doctor kind of recommended, right? So there's fish oil. And then recently I've started taking colostrum and I-glutamine. It's kind of an herb, right when I wake up. That helps with kind of, I think, stomach, liver detox.
Gut integrity.
Yeah. Guts. Everyone's talking about the gut. We all care about gut health. There's a whole new thing now, right? So there's that. I take creatine every day, right? So 5 grams of creatine every day. And then I've started taking protein shakes just to get enough kind of protein going.
And your magnesium.
And now I'm taking magnesium. So I, in my 20s and 30s, I used to throw 3 t-shirts and 2 pairs of pants and go on a trip. Now I've got this box of vitamins, geriatric style, geriatric style, where I'm taking this whole medicine pack with me now, right? So first question, for the average person who's of, let's say, relatively average health, who doesn't take any supplements at all, what are the few everyone should be
basics
taking and why?
First thing I will say, to caveat this, is you should test, not guess. And you mentioned this, right? So before you start going on to iHerb or wherever you buy your supplements, you should know what you're deficient in before you start adding anything into your body. That would be the ideal world. Secondly, we know that the nutritional content of food is not what it used to be. It's not, back in the 1900s when food was not as processed as it is today. So most people are having to supplement to a certain extent. What would be my desert island list? Vitamin D. I've never, in all the years of looking at blood work, I've never seen anyone who has been vitamin D sufficient, not even adequate, but just sufficient, who hasn't been supplementing.
That's because we don't work out in the fields all day.
It's a few things, actually.
We're not getting that much sun.
Genetically, not everyone can synthesize vitamin D particularly well. It depends on the latitude of where you live in terms of how the the sunlight hits the land.
Yep.
So if you live in the UK or Ireland, you know, you're screwed. The darker your skin.
Because of the sun or other reasons?
All of the above. The darker your skin, so the more melanin you have in your skin, the harder it is for the sun to, again, synthesize the vitamin D. So there's a whole host of reasons why people are deficient. So that is something that nearly everyone has to supplement with to a certain extent. I would add creatine into that. That's a molecule that we make ourselves, a compound that we make ourselves, and we store it mainly in our muscles. We make it ourselves. Women make less than men. What we now know with all of the research that we have on it is that the more that you have, the more it gives you energy, improves your strength, it even improves your cognition.
So everyone should take 5 grams of. You can obviously, what do they call it, overload in the beginning or whatever.
Yeah.
But forget all of that.
Keep it simple. 5 grams a day.
5 grams a day into a glass of water or whatever
Yeah.
you're drinking in the morning or at any
100%.
point. It doesn't matter. Just put it in and just have 5 grams of creatine.
And it's the most widely researched supplement on the market.
Yeah. Interesting.
So we've got vitamin D, we've got creatine, magnesium. It's involved with over 300 enzymatic functions. So everybody needs some extra magnesium. We kind of blow through it when we're stressed and tired and exercising. And omega-3, you mentioned this, fish oil, because that brings down inflammation.
So those are the go-to must-haves, hopefully, for anyone listening. At least start those now. And is that different if you're 20 versus 30 versus 40 versus 50 or not really?
Not really. I think all of them are basic foundational supplements that we all need. I mean, things like creatine you make less of as you get older. So you could argue that you might need higher amounts of creatine when you're older than when you're younger. But most of them, I think, shouldn't really make a big difference.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about different ages, what advice we'd have for different people at different ages, right? So if I could go back, talk to myself in my 20s, right?
Yeah.
Outside of telling myself to drink less, which would probably be one.
But would you tell yourself
I would
that?
tell myself that I'm not going to do it. I would give the advice. I would at least try. But outside of that, I guess my one piece of advice would be just pick up strength training. Even just get the habit of strength training as early as possible. I'm trying to do it now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of enjoying it, but I don't find it easy, but I'm trying to stick with it. But if I had picked that up as a habit earlier, I feel like I'd be in a different position, right? So that would be what would you, if you were giving advice to a 20-something-year-old or even yourself, if you could go back, what advice would you give?
Definitely strength training. I would definitely emphasize the importance of sleep and stress management, because I think when you're young, particularly in your 20s, you think, I remember saying you can sleep when you're dead, or someone said that to me and I used to go around saying it like it was a badge of honor, and spent 25 years as a corporate investment banking lawyer saying that, doing that, living that, and my health suffered. So there's no reason why you should be, in your 20s, not focusing on those as much as we are now in our 40s or our 50s or
get
older.
8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, get adequate sleep. Prioritize recovery as much as you do going in and smashing it in the gym or, going out at weekends.
Okay, and how does that change 30s? What advice would you give to someone in their 30s now?
I think it's the same advice. I think it's just about being consistent and prioritizing your health as a whole. And I mean, I grew up in the age where there was a new diet every week. It was low carb, and then it was low fat, and then it was high protein, and then it was carnivore.
Was the big one, right?
All of the above. But nobody ever spoke about having a balanced diet. No one ever spoke about just being healthy for the sake of being healthy. It was always some fad that you had to jump onto. And I think what people recognize now is health isn't about being skinny. Do you remember Kate Moss was, that image to drive for? Now people want to be healthy.
Beanie and jeans.
Yeah. I mean, each to their own, I know it. But it's about health is much broader, right? It's, are you sleeping well? Are you managing your stress? Are you hanging out with your friends, which you definitely always do, so that's great. Are you eating the right things? It's all of it is like a whole picture, I think.
I mean, I get that, but to me, that's more stressful because there's not like one thing you can do, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but that's life.
You just listed 6 things I need to
I've
worry
got
about.
more as well.
And that just makes me more stressed. So what is the advice? Let's say going into I am in my 40s, right? So I need to get enough sleep. I need to work out. I need to watch or at least monitor what I'm eating. I need to take my supplements. I need to Obviously, still spend time with my family. I need to grow my business.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, now I'm feeling stressed just hearing your list.
Yeah.
I think I would change the wording, like, because how we speak to ourselves is kind of how we respond. So rather than saying, I need to, I get to spend time with my family. I get to train. I get to stretch with Carly on the balcony every morning. Like, reframe how you're saying things
That's my
to
wife,
yourself.
just for anyone
the
who's
audience.
wondering, that Carly is my wife.
It's just, it's not I need to, it's not I have to, it's I want to, I get to, I'm going to. And back to what we said right at the beginning of the conversation, like, if each day is not perfect, it doesn't matter. Like, just move on next day. So today I didn't get to do everything, but I got to do this. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think people in their 40s are very lucky in a way that, as in the sense that there's a lot of information available now, but also there's a lot of information, so
Right.
it's overwhelming to some degree. I guess I'm doing a natural plug for someone like you, because I've found it very helpful to have someone who I can text, and I do most days. What about this? What about that? I saw this, because I don't know, right? And you can ask AI and all this stuff, but I think it's better to, in this case, kind of have somebody who really knows me. And unless I'm going to put all that information into AI, which I'm not really excited about doing at this point, there are factors that somebody who really understands my lifestyle, my mentality, what I'm trying to accomplish, it's a little bit different than just putting in my biomarkers into AI and saying, because I've seen that already, the AI coach, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Do you think you'll be replaced by?
No.
Okay.
For that exact reason.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how much data that AI has. I mean, we will be at a point in time, probably not too far off. We're probably already there where they can have all of your information, your likes, your dislikes, your blood work, your lab work for the last 10, 15, 20 years. But they still won't be able to coach you in the way that makes you want to get to your goal unless they know you.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're at the point yet where they know your personality. I mean, they can get there, but there's still something about working with a person where there's an accountability and there's a high touch point that I think is different to being told what to do from a machine.
And do you use AI in different ways, let's say in the last year, to help with some of that analysis when you're working with clients? Or how do you use AI right now in your field and in your business?
Efficiencies. I save so much time now. I used to spend hours writing reports for people, and I would be scrolling through 5 years of blood work. And there's arguments that 5 years ago is irrelevant, but I want to track
patterns.
Exactly. So now what I do is I can just upload the blood work and say, how has Rickesh's vitamin D levels changed since 2016 or whenever it might be. So it saves me hours of time. And then alongside that, you put your knowledge of the person and their lifestyle and where they live and what color their skin is. And then you know why there might be a vitamin D deficiency. And I know, because I've been working with you for years, that you do supplement. So why is it still low? So you can use it to make things more efficient, more accurate, but it doesn't replace the person, I don't think.
No, I mean, I agree. I think it can hopefully make your life a little easier, which maybe means you could take on more clients or
be more creative. Like when it takes away the operational burdens for any business, for any entrepreneur business, it gives you space and time to think, which I think is liberating for many entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're trying to do as much as we can with AI right now, just to create more efficiency and have more time to be creative and reach more people and scale and all that kind of stuff is kind of interesting. Okay, so we got to the 40s. We got sidetracked by AI. 50s, 60s, any different advice? Is it still strength training?
Yeah, but it's more about mobility. I think it's really making sure that you're not only maintaining your strength as much as you can. I mean, we're aging, right? To a certain extent, we can't stop aging. But it's also making sure that you're mobile. There's a higher risk of mortality from someone falling and getting a hip fracture than breast cancer, meaning that if you fall, you become immobile, you are much more likely to die within a short period of time than if you have cancer.
Because everything kind of deteriorates.
Because everything deteriorates. And for me, that is a frightening statistic. So, my parents are actually in their 70s and their 80s, and all I care about is that they're moving and they're mobile and they're active.
Okay. So my parents are in their late 60s, early 70s, and I've been trying to kind of talk to them about some of this stuff. What's the advice for those of us who have parents in that range?
Yeah.
What do you mean when you say mobility? Get them to walk every day?
Walk,
what else?
Stretching.
Every day.
Every day. I mean, flexibility is the one thing that we're born with, but we lose if we don't use it. You know, remember how flexible babies are, right?
I mean, I have a 5-year-old. She's
Yes.
doing flips and
Right.
rolls and all kinds
just
of
keep
stuff.
them moving. And there's loads of great apps that they can follow, and they can, follow the app or do it with each other or whatever they might want to do, but to keep doing it. It's being sedentary that kills us.
I think it's really hard for that generation because they just never grew up with any routine around any kind of, at least my family didn't, and I don't think most of my friends' families did. It might be cultural in a way. I think Indian, to be honest, the last generation of Indians, I don't think really just exercised. It just wasn't really presented to them as something they should be doing. So it's harder now to get that into your routine, right?
I agree with that. I mean, I would almost argue that, in India, there's a huge focus on yoga. Like, did your parents grow up doing yoga?
Nope.
Oh, okay. I mean, my father, I said to my parents that you need to exercise more. My mum's argument to that is, I'm in the garden, I'm gardening, which is better than most.
Right.
You don't want to know what my dad says, but the point is...
I do want to know what your dad said. His walk to the pub is quite a
something along those lines. And then he taps his stomach and he says, old girl, I've got to 82 and I'm absolutely fine doing what I'm doing, which is nothing. But yeah,
he's got a point. I mean, he did make it to 82. Maybe he knows things we don't know.
Yeah.
No, you don't think so?
No, his blood pressure was over 200 6 months ago. Okay. Not anymore. Okay. But this all ties.
That's bad.
That is bad. But all of this ties into what you're saying. It's really hard to change generational thought patterns, right?
Yeah.
And it's impossible for me to change his way of thinking. So, you just have to do what you
How
can.
do you approach that? How would you
guilt.
advise guilt?
Yes.
Yeah, because obviously we want our parents to live
Correct.
as long as they can, but in a healthy way. I mean, we don't want them to be suffering or injured and not having a good quality of life, I guess, right? Like when I made a joke earlier that I don't want the last 5 years, that's because I don't want bad quality of life in those 5 years. Yes, if I'm walking, talking, having fun, enjoying life, then give me as many of those years as I can have, right? And then I'd like to drop dead right at that moment.
Nice, clean, simple.
But so what's the advice? How do we talk to, or do you have clients? Do you have older clients?
I do have older clients. No one in their 80s unless you count my parents, which I kind of do, but they don't listen to me. For a lot of my older clients, once it's back to finding out what their driver is. They want to be playing with their grandkids still, and they want to be playing with their grandkids or whatever. Yeah. So it's normally the family wanting to still be engaged with the family that is the important thing, I think, for them.
All right, let's talk about the next whiskey, which I've already been drinking. So we should do that.
Okay, cheers.
Sean. So this is the Glenmorangie, one of my favorite whiskeys. Glenmorangie, like orangey, is how I was taught to remember how to pronounce this whiskey. Not Glenmorangie, as most Americans would say.
Or Australians.
No Morangie. It's Glenmorangie, like orangey. This is the Signet, which is one of their kind of classic, very high-end luxury releases from about 20 years ago, actually, when they came up with this bottling, I think it was. And it's kind of lasted as just what defines Glenmorangie for me today. So hopefully you get a little bit of honey, a little bit of citrus, a lot of orange peel. So that's kind of like, and this is kind of a light, easy, again.
Feels quite heady.
Yeah.
But you say it's light. Interesting.
All relative, right?
Yeah, true.
You're benching 10 times what I am.
Also true, yeah.
And you're saying that's light, right? So it's all relative.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so we got through the age ranges. What about men versus women? I know you have done a lot of research and a lot of work with women, particularly, correct me if I'm wrong here, mostly in their 40s, kind of pre-menopause type stage, maybe late 30s.
Yeah.
You have a book, a cookbook that's really focused on, you have an amazing book that focuses on recipes that really help with certain hormones and things that women need. What made you passionate about this? Obviously, you're a woman and all that, but why focus here? Tell us what you've learned.
Yeah, quite simple, because nobody else was. women from a health perspective have generally been ignored.
Forever, really.
No, forever, right? And I know
there's still old men in in the Senate in the U.S. that are still voting on everything to do with women's health issues.
Correct,
so
right?
That's still happening.
Yeah, and it wasn't. We talked about this before. It wasn't until 1997, which wasn't that long ago, that women were. You had to have women in research. So prior to that, they didn't even have to have women in research. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Which is crazy, right?
I remember 1997.
Yes, me too. So it's not that long ago. So for me, it was a missing gap. It was a missing gap where women weren't being taken care of. They weren't being listened to. There's medical gaslighting. They'd go and see their doctor. They'd be told you're absolutely fine. Unfortunately, all of that is changing. There's a whole tide that is turning now in supporting women as their health is changing. And what happens in women's health in their sort of late 30s, 40s, 50s is huge hormonal change. It happens at puberty. It happens when you have children. It happens in perimenopause, menopause, which is
really most of your life.
Most of your life, we are in constant turmoil. Does that make sense to you now?
Yeah. I mean, for any guy who's listening, I think, you have a mom. You may have a wife or a girlfriend. You may have a daughter. I think it's important to learn about these issues. This is not a women's issue, right? This is for all of us to understand better and give us potentially a better understanding of our partner or our mom or whoever, or a close friend who might be going through some things like that, rather than kind of writing it off as this woman is this way or that way, right? There might be other things going on. You might be able to help them if you understand some of this, right? So what is it? Talk to me. I'm ignorant. Pretend I'm ignorant male. What do I need to understand about, let's say my wife is going through this particular
stage of life.
Right? This is
okay. What is it? What should you understand? So menopause is when a woman stops having her period.
Right.
What does that mean in practical terms? It means that you stop producing the sex hormones that you have for most of your adult life. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Now, if you told a guy that you will no longer have testosterone from here on in, can you imagine the outrage that would cause? Imagine how men would respond to that.
Yeah, they'd be crying in the corner.
They would be crying in the corner. But that's effectively what's happening to women. And with men, they do go through a reduction in testosterone production, but it's a much slower decline. With women, it's a bit like falling off a cliff. Oh, wow. And the biggest thing is that we have receptors for hormones in every single part of our body. What does that mean? That means that when we have low estrogen, it affects our heart health. So women are more predisposed to cardiovascular disease than men. It affects our lungs. It affects our muscles. It affects our brain.
That's surprising to me because usually cardiovascular disease, correct me if I'm wrong, is more associated with men. More men have heart attacks.
Women are twice as likely to get cardiovascular disease than men. And women are more likely to be turned away from the ER when they present with a heart attack than men because the symptoms are different. Again, it goes back to not having done the research. Men will have the typical heart attack symptoms.
Right, chest pain.
Correct, whereas women present differently. So they'll get sent home. So not only are they twice as likely to get it, they're twice as likely to be ignored.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. And that's just one of the missing gaps which are in the process of people, filling and educating and sharing and understanding. So, yeah.
And do you work with most of the women you work with, is it educating them on this, or do you feel they have the education and it's more helping them to
both,
let's say, take the right supplements or diet or I'm sure many different things to try to, are you really trying to combat it, or are you really trying to what is
work
the goal?
with it? This is such a great question. You can't stop it. I mean, we have hormone replacement therapy, which means that we can take exogenous hormones. So we're, same way that guys take testosterone when it dips, they can take a shot. Right. Women can take the hormones to help manage them go through the menopause process more easily. But you can't stop it. Like when you stop having your period, you stop having your period.
Yeah,
so when
it happens at different ages.
Correct,
right?
different ages,
huge
range.
Yeah.
And then so my goal is to help women understand what's happening to their body, to help them understand what they can do to make that process be as seamless as possible. And it's rarely seamless. I mean, you rarely go through it without noticing it. Like for many women, it's horrendous. But what can help is the way that you manage stress, the way that you prioritize sleep, the way that you look after yourself, the foods that you eat. So actually your lifestyle plays a huge part in how your body transitions through that hormonal change.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend a few months, a female
Yeah.
friend. I think she's in her early 50s. She was telling me, which I didn't know, and I don't know if this is common or not, but having sex changed for her in terms of it became all of a sudden excruciatingly painful.
So again, you've got estrogen receptors in every part of your body, including your vagina. So that leads to dryness and tenderness.
But she thought there was something wrong with her, not
Yeah.
that she didn't relate it to hormonal changes and menopause or I don't know the exact details, but because it's not talked about a lot.
Right.
Is that fair? Is
Yeah,
that
100%. I mean, it's getting better, but you can imagine the kind of fear and scaremongering there is around women that are experiencing symptoms like that and wondering what the hell is going on with me. And what's even worse is doctors aren't taught menopause, so there are still many, many doctors who you will go to with these symptoms who might not correctly identify that you're going through perimenopause or menopause.
Wait, you mean if you see an OB, who would you see? You mean a GP wouldn't know that, or
Some
an OB?
don't, particularly some of the more traditional doctors here. I have so many clients who have been gaslighted, who have been told there's nothing wrong with you. You're too young to be in perimenopause.
Which is just not true.
Which is just not true. The fact that you feel terrible, you're imagining it. Go home, you're fine.
You're imagining
You're
it.
imagining it. Like I'm
What
not
a crazy
making
thing to have a doctor
Yes.
tell you.
Many women. So some of the symptoms we talked about how it affects your brain is anxiety and depression. Many women are put on anti-anxiety meds and depression medication rather than trying to support them. They're not in need of those drugs. That's
Right.
just kind of like the plaster that they give you. It's getting better, but there's still a big black hole of knowledge.
Well, thank you for shedding some light on this matter. We're gonna close up now. Speaking of things that are not true, we spoke ahead of time, and you gave me 8 mythbusters,
I
right?
really give you 8.
Yeah, you gave me eight mythbusters. So these are all not correct statements, I believe. You tell me a little bit more about them. So I'll read out the statement,
Okay.
and you tell me your reaction to the statement, because these are things we see across the internet all the time, and or things people tell their friends, or all that kind of, or probably through TikTok videos, since that's how everyone gets information today. So number 1, carbs are bad.
False.
Okay.
Carbs are essential for the brain. We talked about this. It's essential for performance, for energy. What else? It's helps you produce serotonin, your feel-good hormone, which helps you produce melatonin, your sleep hormone. So yeah,
I like that you added a little action there. For anyone who's listening and not watching the video, Beth just did the little side to the head with
It's
the two
reached that
palms.
point.
She was
Yeah.
like, "I'm ready for sleep. Stop asking me shit." That was very cute. Okay, carbs are bad. False. But let's go one step deeper there, though. Processed carbs are bad. Like if you're eating stuff that comes out of a box, generally speaking, that's a carb, it's not good for you.
Not
You're
good.
talking about vegetables.
I'm talking about
fruits.
whole, unprocessed fruits, vegetables, carbohydrates in that form. Stuff that still has all the fiber in it and the skin and all the goodness, not the white processed rice or pasta or bread. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have that, but there's no real nutritional value in those foods.
I'll add one tip. Something that I think really works for me is a magical thing called shirataki noodles or konjac noodles. So if you've not heard of this and you want to have the feeling of having a pasta or a rice, and it's not exactly the same, so get over your high horse. It's like, the veg burger is not the same as a meat burger, so don't go in with that. But the feeling of having noodles, right? It does it, and it's like 5 grams of carbs or 10 grams of carbs for like
and
a
fiber,
bowl.
full of fiber, which is
and
great.
a bowl of basically pasta. So shirataki, konjac, noodles, rice, that's kind of got me through these. And actually I kind of like them more now. So I just have that instead of, regular pasta. It's not the same. I'll say it again. There's definitely going to be comments going, hey, it's not the same. I know it's not the same, but it's not bad. It's pretty close, actually, if you prepare it well and you add some chicken and some flavors. Okay, number 2, protein is just for building muscle.
Yeah, the biggest fallacy is that protein is just for gym bros or it's there to rebuild muscle. Obviously, it is there to rebuild muscle, but it's also there for your hormones, for your immune system. It keeps you fuller for longer. And it's the one macro that we can't actually store, so other than in our muscles. So unlike carbohydrates we can store in our liver, or fat we store very easily. So yeah, protein is essential.
True or false? Women get bulky from lifting weights.
False.
Say more.
I thought that was enough. We lack the main hormones, which is really testosterone. We have testosterone, for those that think that women don't. In fact, it's the most abundant hormone that we have in our body. We have more testosterone than estrogen and progesterone.
Really?
100%. Don't doubt me on this.
No, I believe you. It's just like, how have I never heard that?
Right?
Because I think
But
men
we-
have testosterone
Correct.
and women have progesterone.
Yeah, we
My
have
science
it.
teacher failed me.
She did. Good job I'm here.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have testosterone. We have more of that than we do of estrogen, progesterone, but we have 1/10 of what men have. So we have way less. And testosterone is really essential in building a decent amount of muscle bulk.
True or false, and why? Cardio is the only way to lose fat.
False. You can lose fat by, calorie deficit. You can lose fat by exercise. I think for many years we thought cardio was the way to do it most efficiently. And honestly, if you did 30 minutes of running versus 30 minutes of strength training, you would burn more calories in 30 minutes of running. But the benefit of strength training is that you build more muscle, which is more metabolically active, which burns more calories at rest. So in the long term, muscle is your better
Yeah, because
option.
I go to the gym, not often, obviously, but not often enough. But when I do,
Yeah.
I see people on the elliptical
Yeah.
or treadmill kind of slow walking it for like
Yeah.
an hour and a half. I mean, are they really doing anything?
Not really. I mean, there's cardiovascular benefits, but when you're moving that slowly, again, it's, yeah.
Yeah. True or false, and why? Intermittent fasting, super popular, works for everyone.
False. We thought, I am actually as guilty of anyone who used to tell all my clients, here's a tool for you. If things aren't moving, try intermittent fasting.
I mean, I'm trying it right now. It works for me.
It
but not
works
everyone.
really well for some people, but not everyone. And in particular, it doesn't work well for women when hormones are in flux. So when you're in that sort of late 30s, 40s, 50s, when everything is going haywire, the last thing you want to do is to raise cortisol, which is what happens when you don't eat for a prolonged period of time. If you're somebody that wants to fast, I would recommend that you skip dinner, not breakfast. So you can have that window of not eating for 16 hours if you want, but not be in a state of low energy throughout the course of the day.
All right. Number 6, true or false, and why? Supplements replace a good diet.
True and false. They are there to supplement. We talked about this earlier.
It's in the name, people.
It's in the name. Just and you
It's
can't.
like when people tell me, we have an amendment, the U.S. Constitution. How are we ever going to change those? I was like, well, it's literally an amendment. The definition of amendment is change.
Correct.
So supplements. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think you can't have supplements instead of a good diet. But I believe that you need to have both in today's world, and based on the food that we have available to us.
Number 7. This is something I wish was true, but I don't think it is. True or false, and why? Spot reducing belly fat works.
Sadly not. The body will choose where it wants to tap into fat stores for energy wherever it decides. The only caveat to that is there's some quite solid research that some of the high intensity interval training can help target the visceral fat, which is why we're doing it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. 20 years of drinking beer just didn't help.
No.
Number 8, last one. True or false, and why? More training, always better.
False. That was my whole 20s. Eat less, train more. Be like Kate Moss. No. It's about training smarter. It's about giving your body what you need to be healthy, to be vibrant, to feel good. Train smarter, not more.
Well, thank you so much for being here. As always, the whiskey's, well, mine are finished, but the whiskey's not always finished, and neither is the conversation. It's been lovely chatting with you. I learned a lot. Wonderful to hear, obviously, about your story. You're an inspiration as an entrepreneur, as somebody willing to take risk, as somebody who has been successful in making a transition to what I hope makes you happy every day. And obviously I'm a client and a believer and a supporter. And I hope anyone listening who's looking for a coach or maybe just a bit of advice, you don't have to sign up for the 3-month program.
100%.
You could do a one-on-one coaching call
Yeah.
and just start. I think there's a lot of people out there who really wish they looked different or felt different or want to be different, but just don't know where to start. I'm telling you, for me personally, it was having a call with Beth, and I hope she could do the same for you. So that was really great to learn about. Obviously, we talked a lot about supplements and fitness, and I think the whole thing around cardio is interesting because I did a lot of cardio for 20 years, which I think helped a little, but not really. But I think strength training, as we talked about, is key. Shedding light on really what's going on for a lot of women, I would say in their late 30s, 40s, 50s. That's a big chunk, a range of age. So really interesting, and what we can do for our parents as well that are now in their 70s and 80s, and we want them to live a long, healthy life. So we really want to do that. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. Little tradition we've started here is, if you don't mind, I'm gonna sign the glass. And
do you get to keep it?
we keep it up here, actually.
Even better.
So you are enshrined into the Whiskey Unfinished Hall of Fame.
I love it.
As one of our guests, and we thank you so much for your time and your
Thank
knowledge.
you. How fun.
Thank you. There we go. Hey guys, Rickesh here, the Whiskey Chief. Firstly, thanks so much for watching this episode. It really means a lot to us. If you can, like and subscribe below. It just really helps us to keep bringing you the best whiskeys in the world. Solange, and I'll talk to you soon.